March 28, 1945. Near Kassel, Germany. The war was almost over. Everyone could feel it. American tanks rolled through muddy roads, German resistance was collapsing, entire units were surrendering by the thousands. But that morning, something happened that stopped an entire column of American soldiers in their tracks. Private Robert Miller was the first to see them. At first, he thought they were refugees. Then he noticed their uniforms. Then he noticed their feet. His stomach tightened. Jesus Christ! The men walking down the road were Allied prisoners of war. British, French, American, and many of them were barefoot. Some were bleeding. Others were limping so badly they could barely move. The road behind them was stained with small spots of blood. The column stretched for hundreds of yards. Nobody spoke. The Americans simply stared. One of the prisoners collapsed into the mud. A medic immediately ran forward. What happened to them? No one answered. Then an elderly French prisoner pointed toward a group of captured German guards. His face was pale. His eyes burned with anger. They made us march. The road suddenly felt colder. Soldiers exchanged looks. Something was very wrong. The German guards were separated and disarmed immediately. The prisoners were given food, blankets, and medical treatment. As more interviews were conducted, the story became even worse. For weeks, thousands of POWs had been moved from camp to camp as Allied forces advanced. Food had become scarce. Conditions had deteriorated. But one detail kept appearing in every statement. The commander. The same commander. The same order. The same cruelty. According to dozens of witnesses, German Colonel Friedrich Hartmann had ordered prisoners to continue marching despite freezing conditions. Anyone unable to keep pace was beaten. Anyone who complained was threatened. And when supplies became limited, prisoners were ordered to surrender their boots for German personnel. The order sounded so unbelievable that several American officers initially questioned the testimony. But witness after witness repeated the same story. The same names. The same locations. The same command. Captain Edward Lawson stood inside a temporary headquarters reviewing statements. The pile of reports kept growing. His executive officer, Lieutenant Daniel Pierce, rubbed his eyes. How many now? 47 statements. And they all match? Lawson nodded. The room became quiet. Outside, ambulances continued arriving. Doctors treated infected feet. Some prisoners had lost toes. Others had severe frostbite. Many looked decades older than their actual age. A British sergeant named Arthur Collins sat on a cot while a medic cleaned his wounds. The medic shook his head. How far did they make you walk? Collins stared at the floor. Too far. The medic waited. Finally, Collins spoke again. There were men who couldn't keep going. What happened? The veteran's jaw tightened. They disappeared. The tent fell silent. No one asked another question. By evening, the reports had moved higher up the chain of command. Investigators interviewed civilians from nearby villages. Their testimonies matched the prisoners. One woman, Anna Weiss, described watching the column pass through her town. There were no boots. The translator repeated her words. She looked shaken even weeks later. They were walking on ice. Another witness confirmed seeing guards strike exhausted prisoners. A third remembered hearing screams during the night. Every new testimony added another layer, another piece, another wound. The American officers grew increasingly disturbed. The war had exposed them to unimaginable horrors. Yet something about this story felt deeply personal. These were not battlefield casualties. These were helpless men under someone's authority, men who should have been protected. Instead, they had been broken. 3 days later, Colonel Hartmann was located and detained. He arrived at headquarters under armed escort. Unlike many captured officers, he appeared calm, composed, almost detached. Major Henry Foster conducted the first interview. Hartmann sat straight. His uniform remained neat despite the collapse around him. You commanded the prisoner movement? Yes. You ordered them to continue marching without boots? They were military prisoners. The room became quiet. Foster leaned forward. Answer the question. Hartmann's expression barely changed. Resources were limited. The major stared at him. You took their boots. The needs of my command came first. Several officers exchanged looks. Nobody spoke. The interview continued for nearly an hour. The answers never changed. No regret, no concern, no acknowledgement of suffering, only military necessity. When the report reached higher headquarters, it quickly attracted attention. Then it reached a man known throughout Europe, a man whose name carried weight in every American unit, General George S. Patton. At the time, Patton was overseeing rapid operations across Germany. Countless reports crossed his desk daily. Most were military, strategic, operational. This report was different. He read every page, every witness statement, every medical summary, every interview. The room remained silent as he finished. Then he placed the papers down. Nobody spoke. Patton looked toward his staff. "Where is this officer now?" "In custody, sir." Patton nodded. His expression revealed little, but everyone in the room sensed something had changed. Hours later, arrangements were made. The German colonel would be brought before senior command. Word spread quickly. Soldiers whispered about it. Officers discussed it quietly. Even former prisoners heard rumors. Nobody knew exactly what would happen, but everyone wanted answers. The meeting took place inside a former government building converted into headquarters. Military police guarded every entrance. Witnesses waited nearby. The atmosphere felt heavy. Colonel Hartman was escorted inside. Patton arrived shortly afterward. The room immediately straightened. Every soldier stood. Every conversation ended. Patton entered without hurry, calm, controlled, confident. His polished helmet reflected the overhead lights. He took his seat. The room stayed silent. Hartman remained standing. For several moments, Patton simply looked at him. No one interrupted. No one moved. The silence itself felt powerful. Finally, Patton spoke. His voice was calm. "You were responsible for these prisoners. Yes. You ordered them marched. Yes. You took their boots." Hartman hesitated, then nodded. Resources were limited. Again, the room became silent. Patton looked down at several photographs, images of wounded feet, images of frostbite, images of exhausted men. Then he looked back up. His expression never changed. "Did you ever walk beside them?" Hartman frowned. "What?" Patton repeated himself. "Did you walk barefoot beside them?" "No." The answer came quickly. Patton nodded. "Did your officers?" "No." Again Patton nodded. The room waited. Patton paused. Then he spoke slowly. "When a soldier is under your authority, his life becomes your responsibility." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Hartman remained silent. Patton continued. "You failed that responsibility." The German colonel shifted slightly. "The war created difficult conditions." Patton raised a hand. The interruption ended immediately. His voice remained calm. "You had choices." The room stayed silent. Patton pointed toward the witness statements. "You chose convenience." Then toward the medical reports. "You chose cruelty." Then toward the photographs, and men suffered because of it. The words landed harder than shouting ever could. Several former prisoners stood near the back wall. One of them lowered his head. Another stared directly at Hartman. Patton noticed. Everyone noticed. The room felt smaller. He looked at the German commander again. "What troubles me most is not the hardship." Hartman listened. Patton paused. "What troubles me most is that you stop seeing them as human beings." Nobody spoke. The sentence hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. Outside, vehicles moved through the streets. Inside, absolute silence remained. Hartman finally answered. They were prisoners. Patton's eyes narrowed slightly. "No." The reply came instantly. "They were men." The room went silent again. Several American officers later remembered that moment for the rest of their lives. Not because Patton shouted, not because he threatened anyone, because he didn't. His voice never rose. His anger never exploded. His calmness carried more weight than rage. Patton stood, slowly, deliberately. Then he walked toward the window. For several seconds he looked outside. American soldiers were helping former prisoners board medical trucks. Blankets covered their shoulders. Medics moved among them. Life was slowly returning. Patton turned back toward the room. The war is ending. Nobody moved. But history remembers what men do when they have power. Hartman said nothing. Patton's gaze remained fixed on him. Some commanders protect the helpless. The room remained silent. Others exploit them. He paused. And history judges both. No one spoke afterward. There was nothing left to say. The meeting ended. Military police escorted Hartman away. Former prisoners quietly filed out. Many carried visible wounds. Others carried invisible ones. Outside, rain began falling. Soft, steady, cold. Private Miller watched ambulances depart from the courtyard. Nearby, Sergeant Collins adjusted a borrowed pair of boots. The same British veteran who had marched for weeks now stood upright. Still wounded, still exhausted, but free. Miller approached him. "You all right?" Collins looked down at the boots. For a moment, he seemed unable to answer. Then he smiled faintly. "Better than yesterday." The two men stood quietly watching the rain. No speeches. No celebrations. Just silence. Sometimes silence said enough. Years later, many who witnessed that day remembered Patton's words more than anything else. Not the investigations. Not the reports. Not the paperwork. The lesson. Power without humanity becomes cruelty. Authority without responsibility becomes abuse. And even during the darkest moments of war, the measure of a person is often found in how they treat those who can do nothing for them in return. The war eventually ended. Armies went home. Battles became history. But the memory remained, a road filled with barefoot prisoners, a commander who justified suffering, and a general who reminded everyone in the room that uniforms, ranks, and nations could never erase one simple truth. Every human life mattered, even in war. Especially in war. What would you have done? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more World War II stories where humanity, war, and difficult decisions collided, make sure to subscribe.